This TV just hits different. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and this review I have for you of the LG C2 will, I think, turn out to be a lesson in how sometimes the whole TV is greater than the sum of its parts. Thanks for being here and maybe clicking some things. We appreciate the support, and I don't know what this is. Oh yeah, that's you leaving me a comment down below asking any lingering questions you might have about this TV. Can't promise I'll be able to answer all of them, but I'll sure try it. I'll see you there. Okay then, let's talk about this TV. So I know that most of the folks who are going to watch this video are not necessarily hardcore TV enthusiasts, maybe a little TV curious. But if you've started doing some research on the LG C2 OLED here, then you've probably seen some deep topics like whether the C2 actually has an EVO panel, WC versus WBE. I mean, it's enough to make your head spin if you're just out here trying to find out if the LG C2 OLED is the TV you should buy. I'm gonna help decipher some of that stuff, but let me start out by saying this. The LG C2 is by all accounts a truly excellent TV. But figuring out whether you should buy the C2 is a bit tough because there are a lot of really excellent TVs to choose from this year. It's like one of those reality shows where you have one very attractive single person, that would be you in this metaphor, faced with a whole host of highly attractive humans, a real hotness buffet, if you will, and somehow they're supposed to choose just one. Well, just like humans, even the hottest TVs have little quirks or nuances that might make the difference between the TV that's right for you and maybe a TV that's right for somebody else. So let's find out if the LG C2 is your type. The LG C2 sure is pretty to look at, whether it's turned on or turned off. I love the new lightweight stand, I love the utter lack of bezels, the sleek trim, and despite being a very serious piece of electronics, it's also remarkably lightweight. LG's WebOS, which is how you spend most of your time interacting with this TV, has seen a few improvements. It's faster to navigate, which I appreciate, no waiting for the TV to catch up with your button presses. And LG's made it easier to switch between sources. You don't have to keep pulling up the home dashboard if you just want to switch from Netflix to your cable box, for instance. That faster interface is a byproduct of a better processor in this TV, which is going to play a big role in the LG C2 conversation, so keep that going in the back of your mind for a bit. Now, once you've got this TV out of its box and you run through the setup wizard, there are more than just a few picture preset choices available. The first thing I have to say here is you spent a lot of money on this TV. You should make sure you're getting out of it what you want. So go through the picture modes while watching a piece of content you like and see what looks best to you. If that happens to be the standard picture mode, that's fine. That's a place to start. And LG standard mode is better than a lot of the competition, but I would encourage you to go ahead and experiment and find what you like best. I think the main reason folks like the standard picture mode is because it feels brighter, and in many cases it actually is a bit brighter than some of the other options. But the thing that I think really strikes folks is the color temperature. In the same way you can buy warm and cold light bulbs for your lamps and light fixtures at home, your TV can have a warm or cold color temperature. Standard mode tends to be cooler. That means there's quite a bit more blue in the whites, and this might be better for you when watching in the daytime. Something like filmmaker mode or cinema mode is going to have a warmer color temperature and will probably be better when you're watching in the dark. You can get a sense for the difference in this comparison that we have right here. But these different picture modes don't just affect color temperature, they also affect varying degrees of processing. So just know this, you can change the color temperature right here under the color section of the picture settings menu. It's a slider that goes up and down and you can choose what you like. Reviewers like me tend to choose a color temperature that is as close to D65 white point as possible, but you don't have to. Anyway, here are a few things I think you should hunt for and change if you buy this TV. Find the eco settings and turn them from auto to off. This ensures you can adjust the pixel level brightness of this TV. I would also suggest you go into the brightness section of the picture settings, go to peak brightness, and choose the level that you feel gives you the picture you want. Now, this setting is maxed out in HDR and Dolby Vision modes already, but for SDR content, which is mostly what you get from cable or satellite, you may want to set this higher, especially if you watch during the day in a brighter room. Now, I don't personally use AI Picture Pro on this TV, though you might like it, but I definitely do make sure dynamic tone mapping is on in HDR mode because I think LG's processor does a great job of optimizing HDR images, whether it's for movies or games. Oh, and by the way, in the game optimizer, it's already turned on, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, I'm about to get to the picture quality section of this review, but before I do, I want to dig a bit deeper into some technical aspects in a section I like to call Numbers for Nit Nerds. By the way, do you all like that, or do you think it's stupid? Leave me a comment about that right now. Anyway, if you want to skip this section, by all means, do so. There's a timecode link right down below. Okay, my friends, here's the deal. Using a profiled C2 colorimeter and CalMan Ultimate software, I calibrated the 2-point white balance on this TV in the user menu. Here's full field white at the default warm 50 setting, and here's full field white after adjustment. Now that's D65. You can go with whatever white point you want. Now I'm not going to give you my adjustment numbers because your panel won't be the same as mine, and therefore my numbers could be wrong for you. Now if you want, you can buy some gear and watch some YouTube videos and DIY this, or just hire a calibrator, which I assure you involves far fewer headaches. As for peak brightness, I had an interesting experience I want to tell you about. I put the TV in ISF bright mode with all the settings I mentioned earlier, and max brightness in SDR at this white point came in at 314 nits. In HDR, and this is for a 10% window, it started at 765 nits, but as I let it sit there, the numbers actually climbed up, which I've never seen before. It stopped and held at 820 nits, but took like 20 seconds to get there. But then I tested a 2, 5, and 25% window, and I ran the usual grayscale test, and really 770 nits was the consistent number. Now, this leads me to believe that the processing in HDR has everything to do with getting up to that 820 nit number in the highlights. Speaking of processing, LG wants you to know that Evo is not a panel. So WBC, WBE doesn't matter. Again, this is what LG says. Evo is a combination of panel technology and processing, and it's the combo that results in higher brightness performance in key areas. So we are less likely to see a difference between the C1 and C2 when running pattern tests, and more likely to see the differences when doing side-by-side comparisons with content, and even then, mostly in SDR. I actually think the C2 has superior dynamic tone mapping in HDR, and that's what makes the biggest difference between the two TVs. And also, it's what makes me feel like the C2 really is an advancement over the C1. And differences can be seen just as well in the dark areas as the bright areas. More on that in a moment though. As for color, the C2 is solid, covering about 98% of the DCI-P3 color space and about 73% of Rec 2020. If it were able to get brighter, that Rec 2020 number would be a bit higher. But honestly, I never spent any time wishing the average picture level on this TV was higher, so it's hard to knock the C2 for its peak brightness number. Also, this panel is pretty pristine, and not just an absence of dirty screen effect, but the processor seems to have zapped any perceivable screen door effect, even in the whites, which was something that I saw some people complaining about in the past. So, stepping away from the measurements, what are the key takeaways on the picture quality of the LG C2? Well, I think it's important to point out that the C2's more advanced Alpha 9 Gen 5 processor is bringing some real benefits here. It makes the TV seem brighter on average while still giving you punch in the highlights and preserving a surprising amount of detail in those bright areas as well. Maybe as good or better than Sony. I mean, we'll have to compare this to the A80K to find out for sure, but I think it's gonna be close, and that's really saying something. As I mentioned before, dark areas benefit too. The dynamic tone mapping on this TV preserves inky blacks, but it has better shadow detail because the processor is analyzing way more segments of the screen in real time, and it's boosting areas that need a bit more luminance for detail, but keeping truly dark areas pitch black, and the difference is noticeable. The contrast really looks better than previous LG OLEDs, and I think that's gonna make a step-up G2 look even better as well. Color just looks excellent. It's rich and vibrant and wholly satisfying. Now, a brighter TV could have higher color volume, but I didn't spend any time feeling like I was missing anything. Most of the time, I just found myself thinking, man, this TV is gorgeous. Resolution of fine detail is another of the C2's strengths. I feel like there's depth and dimensionality that comes through stronger here than it has in LG's OLEDs of the past. It's part of that whole experience being greater than the sum of its parts thing I was talking about earlier. There may be 3 tiny changes in factors contributing to that one aspect, but the improvement winds up being visible. Now, as for motion, this is always an interesting conversation with OLED because there's a strobing effect that can happen when you have tight patterns panning across the screen, which is actually an effect of an OLED panel's instantaneous pixel response time, not the fault of the TV's motion processing. For instance, as you can see here, when the tight grid pattern in this image moves across the screen, you have a bunch of areas where pixels are shutting completely off to support the dark areas of the patterns, as others are lighting up brightly to support the illuminated areas of the pattern. And because that switching happens immediately and across a wide area of the screen, you get a little bit of a strobing effect. You don't see it too often when watching movies and TV shows, but you might get a little more with gaming. Anyway, this is not new to OLED, and it isn't an issue with motion processing per se. When it comes to the TV's ability to handle 24, 30, 60, and 120 FPS content, the TV's motion is executed very well with minimal judder and no blurring. Fast motion will appear to blur because your eyes can't keep up with the motion, which is why black frame insertion was invented. However, even though the BFI on this TV has been improved to reduce overall dimming of the picture, it still dims the picture, and it's not a look I'm a fan of. So my personal preference is to endure brief moments of blur in favor of a brighter overall picture. Moving on to sound quality. I mentioned in my unboxing video for this TV that the small oval drivers I saw firing down didn't inspire a bunch of confidence that the TV would sound very good, but I'm pleasantly surprised. This TV sounds really decent. I don't find the faux surround effects especially impressive, but overall audio fidelity is totally respectable. I think a soundbar is going to offer better dialogue clarity with less chestiness than I'm hearing from this TV, but on the whole, this is actually one of the better sounding onboard audio systems you can get in a TV. As for gaming, here's the thing. LG, from a feature standpoint, is still the most advanced out there, if only because its top-tier TVs support every conceivable gaming feature on the planet. Its real differentiator is its support for G-Sync, which, as far as I'm aware, remains an LG exclusive. LG's tweaked gaming dashboard is even more slick than it was before, though some of its options are less necessary since picture adjustments for game genres aren't as needed thanks to the better dynamic tone mapping I mentioned earlier. On the whole though, with great motion handling in game mode, great picture quality, and HGIG support, it's gonna be hard to beat this TV for gaming purposes, I think. I'm gonna do a much deeper gaming related dive when we start comparing the LG C2 to other TVs this year. And I do think that Samsung's cloud gaming support might be reason enough to reconsider the C2 as the blanket best TV for gaming in 2022. But the fact that it's such a tight run for that title means this TV is going to be more than adequate for 97% of folks who are going to play games on this TV, be it the little 42-incher or the massive 83-inch model. As for complaints, I don't have many. There's not much in the way of cable management for this TV, which is a shame because the back of the TV is so clean before you start running HDMI and Ethernet cables. At least all the ports are now side-mounted though. The Magic Motion remote, I think it needs more of an update. I mean, there are fewer buttons, but do we still love Wii-style motion control? I don't. I'll take a rechargeable remote with a finder function and a modicum of buttons over this any day. Also, I don't know about WebOS. It's faster than before, which I appreciate, but I use WebOS every day at home, and I guess I just put up with it. Look, it's an advanced smart TV system, and it can do a lot, but it also has a lot of ads, and it feels a bit cluttered to me. I can see folks getting lost in it, and honestly, since I'm having to be persnickety here, it's one of a very few things on this TV about which I'm just not really stoked. Otherwise, the LG C2 is an incredibly good TV. If it weren't for the stiff competition out there this year, I'd say buying the C2 is as no-brainer as no-brainers get. Honestly, I can't wait to see how the Sony A80K compares, because when you look at the price, the LG C2 comes in around $500 less than any TV that can punch as hard as it can. Now, the improvements over the C1 individually may not look like much, but taken together, make for a C2 that I feel is quantifiably better than the TV that came before it. So is the LG C2 right for you? For about 95% of you out there, I'm just making up numbers now. Most of you out there, I'd say if you can afford it, then yeah, this TV will make you very, very happy. For the other 5% or so of you, I'd say let's see how the competition compares in the versus videos we'll be doing this year. One thing I'm certain of, however, is that the C2 is going to be at or near the top of just about every TV list in 2022. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. What TVs do you want to see the C2 compared to? Leave me a comment about that down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and here's 2 other videos I think you might like.